It's Dina Dahl and Melba Pearson, and we're here on Legal AF to talk about a new legal development and specifically about an obscure court that is going to be making a significant legal decision related to Trump's tariff war. And that is the Court of International Trade. You may not have heard of it. Many of us may not have heard of this because it is that obscure. It deals with specifically trade issues. But people have been bringing lawsuits, as we know, across the country, trying to stop Trump's tariff war, saying that he has basically exceeded the power that he has to impose tariffs. And since this court is specifically around tariffs, it is hearing one of the lawsuits. And this one is they are going to be hearing this week. So let's do a deep dive into the particular issue in front of the court and what we think maybe the likelihood of this particular lawsuit is and how there are still others across the country. Melba, what are you break down like what you think about this particular case?
Yeah. So the main issue here is whether or not the president overstepped his authority in imposing these tariffs through executive order. Now, the suit itself is being brought by 5 companies, one of which is called VOS Selections. They are a New York State wine importer, and 4 other companies that are like, listen, these tariffs are killing our business. And oh, by the way, the president didn't have the authority to be able to impose these tariffs. Now, the crux of the argument is the fact that Congress is the one that is empowered to be able to set anything having to do with trade, anything having to do with tariffs, anything along those lines. But Congress did delegate to the presidency as a general premise, not this president, but just all presidents generally. They do have limited ability to be able to impose tariffs and things like that, but in narrow circumstances. So for instance, if it's in response to a trade war. So let's say we were normal times and we were beefing with China and China slaps a 50% tariff on us. Well, then the president would be empowered to be able to slap a 60% tariff on China in response because there's an active trade war. But here, the parties are saying, the plaintiffs are like, listen, there's no active trade war. You created the emergency and then now impose tariffs, which is now destroying our businesses. So they're hoping that the Court of International Trade will at least give them some relief so that they can move forward. So I don't know. I mean, first of all, I was today years old when I learned about the Court of International Trade. So, I'm definitely figuring this out as we go along. But Dina, have you heard of them before?
Well, no. I mean, when not until this lawsuit was filed. And it's funny because that's like reporting out there is like most lawyers have graduated law school not hearing about it. And it's because there is like the one court and it's located in Manhattan, New York, because at the time it was created and that was back in the early 80s. That was like the busiest international port. Now I'm sure the West Coast international ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach were probably bigger than Manhattan, although I don't know the exact statistics. But the fact of the matter is, it's just out there in Manhattan, New York. And that's why, unless you have a client who's dealing with duties and imports, a typical lawyer is not dealing with this court at all. But they are a court to go to seek exactly this. If you're a company and you're dealing with tariffs, this is exactly what you're going to. As we know, there are a lot of other lawsuits. There's the one in Florida, which actually was brought by the foundation of the Koch brothers, arguing that this is an unconstitutional reach, that Trump is imposing tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act that was created in the 1970s, but that was only allowed, as you said, in emergencies, and he's overstepping that. We know that there's a bunch of attorney generals. California, Rob Bonta, attorney general there, was taking the lead. A bunch of states doing the same thing. Their arguments in federal court is this is an unconstitutional overreach. They're asking the federal court to have jurisdiction over it because the tariff is unconstitutional. We have yet to see how that federal district court is handling that with vis-a-vis the states or the Koch brothers. But the one in Manhattan having to do with the International Trade Court they are going to be looking at that this week. So it will be perhaps our first, perhaps stop, right? They could stop Trump from imposing these tariffs. As we know, he is already backing down himself because he sees the chaotic nature of the tariffs. He's put another pause on it. But a ruling from a court could stop him from doing all of this, at will, imposing it, lowering it, imposing and lowering it, which has been really difficult for small businesses in particular in this country because they can't withstand tariffs like others. And so it's been, even the chaotic nature of it alone has been really difficult. And the interesting thing is there's a 3-judge panel. This is going to be decided by a 3-judge panel. And one of them was appointed by Trump, although he's a Democrat, a protectionist, as they would say. Another panelist was nominated by Obama, and he's known, they say, for taking a scholarly approach to it. So maybe we'll lean into this whole, is it constitutional or unconstitutional? And the 3rd judge was appointed by Reagan all those years ago. And he used to be the court's chief judge. So these 3 judges being thrust into the limelight in a really serious way, going from such a little known court to perhaps stopping Trump from imposing these tariffs, which has become a global market issue, really.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of sad and cool at the same time is that we're learning way more about our democracy and all these, quiet agencies and courts that have been around for decades, but they never got that attention because, again, they just basically would decide on a particular issue. It wasn't something for the media. Like literally, I'm sure all of the, major media outlets are scrambling to be like, where's this court again? Where's this courthouse located? And where do they even have their hearings? Because again, this was something that was so done behind the scenes, and it wasn't anything that was particularly sexy or, legal scholars would be diving into it. We're now learning more about all of these different agencies and courts that really keep the trains running on time and keep our economy moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see, what the court's position ends up being on this. And again, Dina, as you rightfully stated, what about the small businesses? I mean, I think about these adorable companies like on Etsy who are doing all of these, creative crafts and things like that, but they need their supplies possibly from China, somewhere else. And how are they supposed to sustain themselves? Things like that. It's not just the ginormous corporations, the Amazons, the Shein, all those folks. It's the little mom and pop shops who need things and can't have no other way to source the materials to be able to do what they need to do on a daily basis. So I'm curious to see if the courts are going to buy the DOJ's argument that the setting of tariffs is a political matter and not one subject to judicial review. They're basically saying judges have no business looking or reviewing whether or not a president imposes a tariff or not. But again, I think that the plaintiffs here have a very strong argument. They're being represented by the Liberty Justice Center, where basically talking about the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is the act that gave the president the ability to be able to set tariffs. But again, it's in response to an emergency. And him saying, oh, but there's a trade deficit. Oh my gosh. Well, the trade deficit been here. The trade deficit's been here for decades. This is nothing new. So to kind of trot that out as an emergency, yeah, that doesn't work. So again, we're diving into places we've never knew existed, and maybe we're in our jam, but we're going to learn more, and hopefully they're going to be able to set some precedent that the other courts can follow and sort of like be able to debunk some of the arguments made by the DOJ and use some of those rulings or the basically their rulings that come from those judges with whatever they end up putting in their final ruling, borrowing verbiage from that in their rulings later on so that all of the word tracks are more consistent, right? So there's less daylight in between what the different courts are ruling and the justifications they're giving for why these tariffs are not appropriate, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really hard for the Court of International Trade to somehow say they don't have jurisdiction over trade. I mean,
Yes.
maybe the federal court might be easier to make that argument, right? The DOJ might have a better chance there, but here, this is their bread and butter. And you are dealing with longtime judges who are seeing companies come in front of them and try to say that the duties are imposed wrong, or, I mean, this is their bread and butter. When I saw that it was a Reagan appointed judge was one of those judges. I mean, we're talking about people who, are service, public servants at this point. And I imagine even if they had some sort of political bent, all their years of experience, they're really going to be seeing it in that light. And so this is going to be something for us to keep an eye out on Legal AF to see what this ruling is. It's going to definitely be, I think, a strong ruling in terms of seeing how, again, we're seeing the resiliency of democracy here. We're seeing the resilience of hey, you created a court specifically for this. What are you going to do about it? So we wanted to talk about this in advance before they have their hearing and anything out, because of how little is known about this court, and to see the distinction between them seeing it and the federal courts, which is still going forward. But this is going to be very interesting to take a look at. You're here on the Legal AF channel. Melba and I are so excited to break this down for you. Be sure to free subscribe so you can get the updates, frankly, of how this court and other courts do it, which is so important for, as you said, everyday Americans who are either trying to shop right now or buy something or sell something. I mean, we're all affected by this trade in so many ways. And this is really just saying, hey, if you're going to do it, follow the law, which frankly he did during his first term. Took him months to impose tariffs because he went through the rules and regulations. Nothing has changed. The law is the same. He's the one that's changed. So be sure to follow us for more updates.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.